These four men still call themselves Ravens because Raven was their radio call sign during the most intense time of their lives, when they were young pilots flying these skies 3 decades ago. Laotians today may not be familiar with the name Ravens, but the words bomb and pilot are nearly synonymous in this country's collective memory. The tour guide Susoth warns the Ravens not to reveal their identity to strangers.
To speak English, they might ask you, who are you? What you are doing, or what do you used to doing? You say, oh, teacher. Then they feel better because you can teach them some English.
Yeah. So we don't want to relate at all that we were pilots or military or anything like
exactly.
that.
The Ravens know that many Laotians will not be glad to see them, but they have personal reasons for making the journey.
After my last crash, I fractured my back. I spent 5 years in rehab, learning how to walk again. I want to go back because I think I left something there, unfinished.
I feel a lot of pain for having eliminated a lot of the population. In Laos, we've been told that 1/3 the population, 1 million out of the 3 million people that were there in the 60s, got killed as a result of that war. So I've done this in Vietnam, and I've gone to all the places that I spent in Vietnam, and the war is over in my head. And this is one little piece of war that's left, and I want to put it to bed also.
The Ravens want to visit with the Hmong in Laos today to see how their former allies have fared in the now communist country.
The purpose of this trip for me is to meet again with the Hmong, to rebond with them. We ate with them, we used their markets, we were with their children. You bonded with these people.
When a Raven first arrived in Laos, he knew nothing about the Hmong or about his assignment.
The whole program was so classified that any kind of formal discussion was severely discouraged, so I had zero knowledge about where it was.
Here is a colonel standing at attention saluting us as we get out of the airplane. The thought that went through my head was, now I know what the kamikaze pilots felt like, because here's all these people coming out to salute us because they think that we're volunteering for a suicide mission.
Every new Raven, in fact all military personnel in Laos, went through a process known as sheep dipping. Brigadier General Heine Adderholt, in charge of Air Force Special Ops in Southeast Asia, was on loan to the CIA.
Well, you sheep dip someone, you hide their identity. That's so if they go over there and get shot down, Uncle Sam can say, he didn't belong to me, and say, go hang the man, you know.
To be sheep dipped means to give up your identity, rank, dog tags, uniform, to temporarily resign from the Air Force.
This gentleman asked who I was, and I said, yes, I'm Lieutenant Deering, and I was in uniform at that time. He says, well, go into the men's room and change. He says, you will never wear a uniform again from now until you finally go home, and you're actually back in the United States for the last time.
Nobody has a real name. Nobody has a real name. In fact, it's years later, and I'm still meeting people and finding out what their real names are, 30 years later.
Fighting in civilian clothes without military ID is against the Geneva Convention, which meant a Raven would not be protected by the rules of war if he were shot down and captured. The CIA gave many Ravens an alternative.
He said, in case you're ever captured, you might prefer to have a way of stopping everything very quickly. And what he had was a box of cyanide pills, and he wanted to know, do you want your cyanide pill? Well, I always thought a cyanide pill was be a lot littler, you know. No, they're big Hummers. They are really huge, and you'd have to chew on the damn thing in order to get it down. And I reached over to look at it closely. He pulled it back because he was afraid I was going to taste one, I think. Gracefully declined. No, I told him I really didn't think I needed one of those.
The secrecy wasn't intended to deceive the enemy. The communists knew exactly what the Ravens were doing in Laos. But all sides had an interest in pretending to respect Laotian neutrality while using Laos to further other agendas.
Obviously, the North Vietnamese recognized that there were Americans flying these airplanes and Americans advising the ground troops, but it was sort of a wink and a nod. And so this was part of this sort of Alice in Wonderland war that Laos was in so many ways.
The American public was mostly unaware that Laos had become an adjunct to the fighting in Vietnam. Ravens signed a promise to keep even their own families in the dark.
I think this program will be all right. It beats the hell out of Vietnam, where there is no more war.
Cassandra Towsley was in college in the 60s when her family began to receive strange letters from her brother, an Air Force pilot in Vietnam.
He told us little. One of his letters says that it was a secret operation and that it was flying a different kind of aircraft and that it was very important. And that it was the military, but outside of some of the parameters. And that when we wrote him to please not make any reference to the government or the military in any of our letters to him. He would be over there as a civilian.
30 years later, Cassandra is looking for answers about her brother. The only thing she knows with certainty from his letters is that he was a forward air controller, FAC for short. A FAC's job was to fly low and slow in a small plane over enemy territory, seeking out targets that might shoot back at any moment.
So it's sort of, trolling for ground fire, trolling for targets, so you could have something to bomb.
And if you see anybody, keep circling until they either shoot at you or wave at you. And if they shot at you, destroy them. If they don't shoot at you, go look for somebody else.
Once a target was located, the Ravens called in bombers and gave specific instructions on where to drop ordnance.
We were the decision maker. That meant handling a lot of radios, meant talking with a lot of people almost simultaneously, understanding what the fighters can do, understanding what the ground forces need, understanding what the ordnance means. How close can you put it to friendlies? I've got several flights of air stacking up. It got real busy.
Being a FAC was the greatest combat job that exists in the world. You are controlling the battle. You're controlling the flow. You're finding the targets. You're doing everything that comes to war fighting, and you're in charge of it. You were God Almighty. You were in charge. You were the FAC.
The main air base out of which the Ravens flew their FAC missions was Long Chen, a secret city created by the CIA deep in the mountainous jungle. Closed to Westerners since 1973, Long Chen is at the center of the fighting that still occasionally erupts in Laos. And it's exactly where the Ravens are headed.
Talking about the food up there when I got up there.
Ever since the Ravens began planning this trip, the place they've most wanted to return to is Long Chen.